All right, today we're going to look at speciation. All right. Speciation is when new species of an organism form. All right. All species came from another species. That's evolution. That we have all these different types of bears. We have all these different types of deer. Were they all one at some point? That's what evolution claims. Okay? So speciation is the rise of two or more from one existing species. And there are several different reasons why this could happen. All right? So the main thing is speciation happens if there's no gene flow, which we just looked at gene flow on the drill. If genes can't go back and forth between populations, then those two populations become separate and they eventually change into their own species because of lack of genes. So example here, we got a river separating two land masses. If a population of goats lives over here and a population of goats lives on this side and they can't swim, can we have gene flow? No, the genes from this side can't get across and vice versa. Eventually, over time, evolution says that those two populations become two new species. Because are they going to be the same anymore? No, because they've got their own geographic stuff to deal with, their own predators and prey and food sources and all on these separate places. Okay? That's what speciation is. How this happens: first one's behavioral isolation. Every organism has a certain ritual for mating. This bird right here, this species of bird, this is the male bird. What's he doing? He's putting on a show for the female. All right? He's got this skin thing, whatever, in the front of his body that he puffs up. It turns bright red. It's attractive to the female. And that's how they breed and how they mate. All right? There's other organisms that do similar things. Anybody hunt? Wild turkeys. What do you notice about male wild turkeys in the spring? They've got this red thing that hangs down their front of their neck. It turns real bright red and puffs up real big when they're trying to impress a female. All right? So could those two birds have come from a common ancestor? Yeah. Quite possibly, because they share common traits in their mating rituals. But are they the same bird? No, they're different now. All right? Geographic is what we just looked at on the previous slide. Some barrier keeps them apart. So we had that river running through there that cut over time, cut that land in half, and now we got two species on either side of the river. Okay? They can't get to each other. They can't interbreed. They cannot swap genes in their gene pool, so they become two separate species because they adapt to where they are. Okay? Temporal means temperature, climate. All right? We find this a lot in plants. Do all flowers bloom at the same time? They can't. All right? These tulips here in the picture bloom at a certain time of year. When the climate is exactly right for them, they bloom. Do they bloom at the same time as roses? No. And there's a reason why. Can they go choose their mate? Can this tulip get up and walk over down here, a couple hundred yards and choose a mate? No, he relies on someone else to do it for him. So it's out of his control. So if we had roses growing here right next to them, which you can see there's some red flowers right there, if they were growing together, can they choose not to go breed with that rose? No, they can't. Flowers can't. Plants can't. So instead of having a population of tulips and a population of roses, if they both bloomed at the same time, eventually you wouldn't have tulips and roses. You'd have rulips because they would interbreed and become one species. That's why they bloom at different times. All right? So that when they get help and get their fertilization process going, they only get fertilize other plants that are like them. Okay? Think about pine trees and oak trees. Do they reproduce at the same time? No, they don't. Because if you have pines and oaks together, and you've got organisms taking the sperm from one plant over to the other plant, they don't care which plant they go to. So there's no, we wouldn't have pines and oaks anymore, we'd have pokes. You'd have a whole new breed, a whole new species, because they would interbreed. They do it at different times so they don't interbreed. Okay? Last one is reproductive isolation. This is kind of like what plants do, but it's for other organisms. We started out with one species. Somehow they got separated. Now, can they breed with each other? No, eventually all of these, which only carry the yellow allele, they're going to all become yellow. All of these that carry, I can't tell what color that is from here, they're all going to become that color. And guess what? We don't have any more of these. They're gone. They don't exist anymore. Unless somehow these two get back together somewhere. Man could do that. Could accidentally carry some of these over and drop them here. Why are there pythons in Florida? Because we did that. All right? We screwed that up. All right, patterns. Those are two of the ugliest frogs ever seen in my life. Do they stand out? Yeah. Is it good in the natural world to stand out?
No, they're not.
No. All right. If that was a pattern in humans and somebody's walking down the hall with red eyes, red hands, and red feet, do they stand out? Yeah. Would they survive here?
Probably not.
You know, we're talking human, you know, would they survive in this building? No, they wouldn't survive. All right. So patterns tend to change things. Natural selection happens for a reason. It's not random. Okay? When something is selected out, there's a reason for it. Is this guy right here, this frog, is he going to survive in a normal wetlands area here in Texas? No. Why? Does he look like anything we have here? So what's he going to be? He's going to be food for somebody. Okay? So natural selection is not random. They're like in Africa, I believe, southern Africa. Yeah, rainforest where there's a lot of color. Okay? So, not random. Happens for a reason. Genes are selected out for a reason because they don't fit there. Okay? Convergent evolution. What's the word converge mean? If two things converge, they come together. Okay? This is where we have species that don't share a common ancestor, but guess what? They're starting to become similar. Shark and the dolphin. Do they look the same? If I look at these two pictures right here, do they look very similar?
Yes.
Yeah. But they're different. One's a mammal, one's a fish. One has gills, breathes underwater. The other one can't breathe underwater, has to come to the surface to breathe. But over time, what are they doing? They're becoming closer and closer and closer as species. Could in a couple million years we not have sharks and dolphins? We have sholphins? It's possible. All right? It's possible. They're starting to look and act more and more and more alike. All right? A smart shark, that's a scary thought. Because dolphins are very smart, very intelligent animals.
What if it's a
Well, you know, a smart shark, megalodon. All right. So if convergent was coming together, what's divergent? They're going apart. This means they started the same and now they've changed. So a possum and a kangaroo. Anybody know what a possum is? How big are they? They're about the size of a cat. They're small. All right? They're real low to the ground. They have 4 legs. They have a long tail. What's a kangaroo? They're big, 5 to 6 feet tall. They have 2 legs, 2 arms. Would you think that those two had a common ancestor? But they did. Because both of them carry their young in pouches. Kangaroo has a pouch on its belly, carries its baby in there. The possum has one on its back, and they carry their babies in there. It's where their babies grow and develop. That's a pretty unique physical feature, to have a pouch where you carry your young. Could that be that they came from the same species? Yes. Think back Pangea, when Australia was connected. Could it be that this one species got split when the land split, and these guys had to develop into this way, and these guys had to develop because of geographic areas? It could happen. Right? Could have happened. There's some characteristics there that say these have to be related. What other organism has a pouch that they carry their babies in? None. All right? We don't have one. It's like putting your baby in a backpack. We can make them, we don't have them. Okay? Adaptive radiation. We're not talking about radiation like radiation that kills you. Radiate, the word here, radiate, means to spread out. Okay? So, rapid divergent evolution. Rapid meaning, evolution terms, 1 million years. That's rapid. Okay? Here's all the finches that Darwin saw. All came from the same species, but what do you notice about all of them? They all have different beaks. So here's the finch on the mainland of Africa. That's where it originates from. Has a certain beak for eating a certain food. But then the 5 islands, the Galapagos Islands there, they're all different. They all turned into new species of finch. Based on what? But why the beak? Yeah, what food they had to eat on that island. Because could they eat the same thing that was on the mainland? No, it's not there. So it's either they learn to eat, they adapt to eat that food, or that group tends to go away. Okay? So this happens rapidly. When we say rapid in evolution terms, you're talking 1 million years. Gradual would be 500 million years. Okay? You got to think in different terms here. Coevolution. This is a fun one. Coevolution is where 2 organisms evolve together. So this insect and this flower have a mutualistic relationship. Anybody remember what that means? They both what? They both benefit. This insect feeds off the nectar of this flower. Right? That's its food source. And then it also, as it feeds, gets the pollen off this flower to take to another flower so that that flower can reproduce. All right? So they both benefit. Over time, though, there were harmful creatures for this flower to where instead of it having its pollen and nectar out here on the outside, where they were getting killed because of it, that flower evolved to where the pollen and nectar is all the way down here inside the plant. Well, if that's its food source, what does it have to do? It has to change. So this thing right here that you see, this long piece, that's its mouth. Its mouth tube. Because what does it have to do? It has to stick that thing all the way down inside that flower to get its food. All right? Does the plant want that insect to evolve? How else is it going to pollinate other plants? Because its pollen is all the way down in here too. So they need to evolve together in order for both species to survive. That's coevolution. Okay? It's kind of weird to see a bug flying around with this long, it's about 6 inches long, hanging off the front of it. Looks kind of freaky. All right? We also have coevolution for competitive relationships. What's that crab do to that snail? He eats it. Okay? That snail is a food source. It's one of the only food sources for this type of crab. Okay? A long time ago, these snails were nice and smooth with a real small, soft shell that was easy for that snail to carry around because that's his home. Did the crab have to have any special thing to break that open and get the snail out? No. So the snail, in order to survive, had to do what? It had to adapt. Guess what it did? What do you see? A harder, larger shell with spikes. Well, the crab had, if he wants to have his food, he's got to do what too? He has to evolve as well. So now you see longer claws, thicker claws. You got to be more heavier to break that shell and reach inside there and pull that snail out. All right. So guess what? Snail says, "Fine, you're gonna do that. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna make some long, more sharp, pointy spikes." What's the crab have to do?
Okay, I'm gonna get.
You see how they both evolve together? All right. This isn't a mutualistic relationship. This is predation. Okay. But they're still evolving together in order to survive. And then we get to the ones that don't evolve. Anybody know what that bird is? That is a dodo bird. It did exist. It's a real bird. Does not exist anymore. Okay, we have fossils of them. But they're gone. They're not here anymore. That's extinction. You all know what extinction means. Okay, it's not found anywhere on Earth anymore. It's gone. Can it come back? No. Once it's gone, it's gone. Okay. Now, we have, over the course of time, people, humans, have put in place some things, laws and that such, to prevent extinction of organisms. All right. Give me an organism that's on the verge of extinction.
Apes.
No. What's
Kangaroos now.
what's the animal that is our animal for the United States?
Eagle.
The bald eagle was on the list of almost extinct organisms. What have they done? Made laws that you cannot harm them, shoot them, kill them, anything, or you will be penalized. Okay, that's another one. So now we're seeing more and more bald eagles. Now, if you keep that for too long, what happens to that population? It overpopulates. So there has to be a balance. All right? Is it bad to kill animals? No. If it's done properly, it is not bad. Because what's going to happen if you don't? Overpopulation in that species is going to eventually die because they have no resources. All right? Where I hunt, I'm a member of a Wildlife Management Association. We have 50,000 acres, Central Texas, that we manage. We count every single deer on that property, on 50,000 acres. We have a biologist who goes through. They look at how many deer we have. What's the climate like? What are the resources available? Is it a bad year, good year? And so they make observations and say, okay, there's 50,000 acres. There's this many deer on those 50,000 acres. It's too much. There's not enough resources to support all those organisms. Y'all need to kill this many to keep the population healthy. All right? Now, do we just kill them and leave them laying? No, you eat them. It's a food source for us. But whether we're getting something out of it, but we're helping the population by making sure that all the ones that are out there have enough resources. All right? Make sense?
Yes.
Mass extinction. What's mass extinction? Means the entire species is gone. All right? All at once, all of a sudden. Okay? You think about the Ice Age. All the organisms gone at one time. Dinosaurs. What's the theory of how they died? Meteor hit the planet, killed everything. That's a mass extinction. We have 5 mass extinctions in recorded history. All right. Could it happen again? Yeah. It probably will. In our lifetime, doubtful, but it probably will. Okay? Some catastrophic event that wipes out every single organism of a species. Someone asked last period, could the wildfires in Australia become one of these? I say yes, but you have to wait till it's all done and see. If there are no kangaroos left on Australia, is it a mass extinction? Yes, it's a mass extinction event because that species is completely wiped out and it's gone forever. Okay, makes sense? Now, it has to be none left on the planet. So if there's two kangaroos that are on an adjoining island of Australia, it's not a mass extinction because they're still there. There's still some there. Okay. Now, if it's two males, they're screwed. Yeah. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. We can't do that. We can do it with some organisms, but I don't foresee that being possible with dinosaurs. Cloning.
No, I want to clone a person.
No, they were all female in Jurassic Park and somehow.
They were hermaphroditic by the way they built them. They built them with both sexes. They were asexual. They reproduced on their own. So. All right. Punctuated equilibrium. A pattern that shows a drastic change all of a sudden, followed by a long period of nothing. Okay, so I'm going to put this up here. Example. We have a certain organism, doesn't matter what it is, we're just going to use this picture here. Millions of years that organism has looked, acted, survived the exact same way. But then all of a sudden, that organism changes. And it changes drastically and quickly. Okay? It takes a left-hand turn. It's not the same anymore. That is punctuated equilibrium. It means it happens right away, messes up the balance, and changes. This is proof against Darwin, because Darwin said everything evolves gradually. Okay? So this is what Darwin said. If we look at these graphs. Do you see any sharp changes? Any sharp bends? Everything is nice and smooth. That's gradual. All right? Punctuated means that all of a sudden we take a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn. Think about driving on the highway. If you come to a end of a road and it's all of a sudden a sharp left-hand turn, do you have to slow down for that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because if you don't, you're going to end up in a ditch. It's a sharp left-hand turn. But you might have a curve to the left that is gradual, real slow. You get to that same direction, but it's a gradual process. Darwin said that things evolve gradually. But we see in our fossil record that that's not always the case. That things can happen all of a sudden. Okay, that equilibrium changes all of a sudden. They take a left-hand turn, new organism is there, old organism is gone. Now, when it says rapid change, what do we mean?
Slow change.
Rapid change is like a million.
In evolution, rapid change, million years. Gradual change, 500 million years. Okay? That's, we got, timing is relative here. Okay? So, talking about that fossils, those fossil record, all right? How do we know when things lived? How do we know when the dinosaurs lived here? We date the bones, all right? Anything that was alive, we can figure out when it lived, or approximate, okay? There's relative dating. That's based on using other things that were alive and trying to fit them into where you think they live. But then we go more so with radiometric dating, carbon dating. All right? All living things contain what? Carbon. Organic life forms, they all contain carbon. And so when they dig up bones, they take out a piece of the center of that bone, the marrow. It's still going to be in there. They take it out, and they see how much carbon is left in it. And you'll learn more about this when you get to chemistry next year. Every isotope, every element has a half-life, which means half of that substance will disappear, dissolve, go away in a certain amount of time. Every element's different. Carbon has a specific half-life. So if they look in there and they see, okay, there's this much carbon left, they can go backwards and see, okay, it was 5 half-lives. That means this organism lived 1.2 million years ago. Okay? So it's based on what's inside those bones, what's left inside those bones. You can dig up humans from the early 1900s and they could do the same thing and tell you when they lived, based on how much carbon is left there. Okay? Origin of life. Where did life begin? Do you know? No, neither do we. Okay. It's something that we can't really put a finite time, date, whatever on organism, because can we go back? No. This planet has been here for hundreds of millions of years. Can we go back? No. Did bacteria keep a record? Did they keep a family tree? No. Can you ask a dinosaur? No. I don't speak dinosaur first off. Second off, they're gone. Okay? So we don't have a definite, but what we do know, we'll go through. So there are a lot of hypotheses out there about how life began. Right? And it all starts with atmospheric studies. Our atmosphere is a unique thing for this planet. This planet has a unique atmosphere based on every other planet we see and we know. Was it always that way?
No.
Has the Earth always been this way? No. If you're interested in that stuff, when you become a senior and you have a science and you take that 4th year science, take astronomy. Okay? Taught it to you a couple of years ago. Coach Minshew teaches it. It's a great class to learn about the building of these planets, especially ours. Okay? But lightning played a key role in the formation of our planet. Anybody know what lightning is?
Energy.
But more specific. Lightning is electrons. A negative charge. You'll get that in chemistry as well. But negative charged electrons. In that cloud, as molecules rub against each other, positives on that, water molecules, that builds up, and then we have a lot of electrons build up in that cloud. The cloud wants to stay equal, homeostasis. What does it got to do? It's got to get rid of them. How does it get rid of the electrons? A lightning bolt. That's what it does. And it goes to another positive thing. The ground, a building, you if you're standing out there, all right? A tree, another positive object. Does that lightning change when it hits?
No. Yes.
It changes it dramatically. If you ever see lightning hit the beach, wait till the storm's over and go dig right there. You're going to find glass.
I wouldn't be able to do that now.
Right? There are people that take like T-posts or metal rods and go tamp them in the ground on the beach when there's a storm coming. Lightning hits it, makes a nice little glass thing down underneath there at the end of the rod. You just dig it up because that's what lightning does. It changes the molecules in the sand, turns it into glass. So if it hits the ground out here, does it change the molecules in the ground?
Yes.
Yeah, it changes things. So what Miller-Urey studied, those two guys studied what organic molecules came from this happening. Okay? Was this a way that carbon got put into the planet where organisms could become and come from? You know, those different types of things. We do know that without 99% that microorganisms were the first organisms here. Bacteria. All right? The oldest known bacteria is a cyanobacteria. We'll talk about these in the next unit. We found fossils of these. That's the oldest fossil we have on record. Ocean bacteria. All right? That's what they look like. They're still around today. Is it weird to think that this was the first thing that lived on this planet? And look at what we have now. Now, these guys, notice they're green. What does that mean? Go back to when we talked about some things that were green and what green organisms do. What do green organisms do? Make? Through what process? Photosynthesis. So if these guys were the first ones on this planet, what do you think they're ancestors of? Plants. They make oxygen. They do photosynthesis. So do plants. Okay? These could have been plant ancestors that evolved over time. We've already talked about endosymbiotic theory. I'm not going to spend much time on that. I want to finish up with cladograms here. Cladograms are how we show relationship and evolution of organisms. You're going to make one of these tomorrow. I'm going to give you some organisms and you're going to make one. Okay? But all of these organisms are related. Would you think that? Would you think that a tuna is related to a leopard? But to a certain extreme they are, because they share characteristics. All right? So which organism or organisms have 4 walking legs? You could look at the pictures, but if I take the pictures off, you look at the descriptions. Everything above this point right here has 4 walking legs. So these 3. Do they still share characteristics with these 3? Yeah. They share a vertebral column, a backbone. They all have jaws, right? So they share things with things below them. So which organisms don't have jaws? These 2 guys here. Because there's the break. This says that everything above this point has jaws. A lamprey and a lancelet don't have jaws. They got a little sucker mouth. That's how they eat. They don't have a jaw, right? But a tuna does. And that's where we get that break. So does a tuna have things in common with the lancelet and lamprey? Yeah. Do they have something in common with the salamander, turtle, and leopard? Yep, they sure do. But they're not as closely related. So which organism would be most closely related to that tuna? Which one does it share the most characteristics with? A lamprey. Because both of them have a vertebral column, both of them have jaws. It can't share it with the salamander because the salamander's got something else. It's got legs. All right, so it's most closely related to that lamprey. All right. That's one way it can be drawn. Here's another way. Similar thing, but do you got pictures now? No pictures. So, are dragonflies more closely related to bacteria, birds, or beetles? And how you look is you count the number of traits they have in common. Every break is a trait. Okay? So here's bacteria. Follow it back over here. How many things do they have in common with dragonflies? How many breaks are there? 1, right there. Because once it breaks, that's it. That bacteria has nothing else in common with it. So is it closer related to a bacteria? Not really. Only has one thing in common. Okay? A bird. Here's a bird. So we go all the way back to its ancestor. 1 break, 2, 3, and then it breaks there. So it has 3 things in common with a bird. Is it more closely related to a bird or a bacteria? A bird. Now let's look at beetle. Beetle's right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one's it more closely related to? The beetle. Okay? Because it has more things in common with it. Does a dragonfly have something in common with a bacteria? Is it on this chart?
Yes.
Yeah, they do. Does a dragonfly have something in common with a plant?
Yes.
Yes. A fish, a mammal. Do you and the dragonfly share similar characteristics? Yes, because we fit right there. Mammals. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 things in common with a dragonfly. Could we have come from a common ancestor? It is possible. Okay. Make sense?